Alright, so this is our presentation on the Comstock laws. Everything in this presentation was collaborated between Annalisa Leon, Tessa Martinson, and Olivia Meja. For our attention grabber, we selected a quote from no other than Anthony Comstock himself. The quote states, "The world is the devil's hunting ground, and the children are his choicest game." We chose this quote because it talks about how the devil tempts younger people to sin, and in this case, Anthony is referencing the sin of sexual matters, which he later bases the Comstock laws around. According to Gale Virtual Library, the Comstock Law of 1863 was a federal law that made it a crime to sell or distribute sources that could be used for contraception or abortion. The materials used were sent through the federal mailing system or was abroad. United States was going under changes in this period of time. The Industrial Revolution was making a numerous amount of jobs available for both men and women, as well as a significant wave of immigrants. The American Medical Association, also known as the AMA, had voiced concern about abortion, not only because of the danger of women, but because women overlooking duties relied on her by a marriage construct. The Catholic Church condemned abortion and birth control as twin evils. States began enhancing laws which made divorce more difficult, and people who were single have greater incentive to marry. All of Anthony's wildest dreams became a reality on the 3rd of March in 1873, the day that the Comstock Law became an official law. They were to be enforced by all U.S. Post Office personnel. They would make sure that no obscene material were mailed. This included anatomy books which depicted the human body. He believed that anatomy books inform people about the injustices in which our bodies could do, which was perform sexual matters. In addition to the censoring of anatomy books, he also censored several great works of literature that were too sexual for his standards. Anthony Comstock was born in 1844 in New Canaan, Connecticut. Comstock had a firm belief that devil's temptations were omniscient, and he rationalized that abstinence from all impure thoughts and behaviors secured the faithful path to righteousness. The two terms Comstockery and Comstockism were used his extensive campaign to censor indecent and obscene material. During his campaign, Anthony destroyed 15 tons of books, 284,000 pounds of plates for printing, objectionable books, and nearly 4 million pictures. Anthony's plans had several supporters. Specifically, this was the AMA, which I formerly stated was the American Medical Association, the Catholic Church, and the several states. The AMA had previously voiced concern about abortion and the toll that it took on a woman's body. They thought it was unsafe. The Catholic Church, to no surprise, condemned birth control. They believed that women should not have contraception because then they would be allowed to have sexual affairs and not get pregnant while out of wedlock. Lastly, several states wanted more people to put a control on marriage and divorce. They offered many people incentives to get married, so that way it was easier for them to have a kid while married. However, they wanted people to stay married, so to create an incentive to not get divorced, they made difficult laws for people to get divorced or if they were divorced. All three of these connect to one central theme, and that is that they don't want women to have a pregnancy out of wedlock or have sex out of wedlock, or else there can be complications. Half a century later, Mary Ware Dennett, a voluntary Parenthood League, worked together to introduce the Cummins Valley Bill in 1923 to repeal against Comstock as infringement on freedom of speech and press. Along with Margaret Sanger and the National Committee of Federal Legislation, who attempted to amend law to exempt medical professionals, Margaret Sanger campaign was from 1929 to 1935, became dispute with federal court decisions. The case of United States versus One Package in 1935 exempted doctors from contraceptive aspects of law, which allowed hospitals and freestanding birth control clinics to multiply. In Boulder versus Young Drug Products Corp. in 1983, preventing Americans from receiving truthful information about how harmful contraceptive to the body is. In 1971, Congress eliminated birth control reference from law. In the Miller versus California case in 1973, Supreme Court declared if works were obscene or lacked serious artistic, violated contemporary moral standards, or portrayed sex in an odious manner. In 1914, Margaret Sanger started a feminist publication called The Woman's Rebel, which promoted a woman's right to have birth control. Instead of being arrested, she fled the country to England, where she referenced birth control. When she came back to the United States, she opened the first birth control clinic in 1916. She started the National Committee on Federal Legislation for Birth Control, and they fought to make it legal for doctors to give out birth control. Margaret Sanger made the first birth control league, which is now known today as Planned Parenthood. She lived to see the Supreme Court make birth control legal in the Griswold versus Connecticut case. In the end, the Comstock laws were deemed unconstitutional because they violated the First and Fourth Amendments. The First Amendment states that there is allowed to be freedom of speech. By limiting what could be sent through the mail so that people could not be educated / read what they want, Comstock laws were limiting the people's right to speech. The Fourth Amendment states that there shall be no unreasonable search or seizures. The Comstock laws violated this because under the law, the U.S. Post Office had to search and seize the mail that was sexual in any way, which is unreasonable because it violates the First Amendment. According to the Gale Virtual Reference Library, enforcing the law was difficult due to all the people who were against him and law enforcement. Consequences were given to the doctors in this situation. Comstock wrote the doctors playing the role as a young pregnant woman who was seduced, abandoned, and in desperate need of information about abortion. The doctor would accept money given from a woman in a letter and would mail back preparations to abort. Then Comstock would arrest the doctor. Attempts to repeal the law were unsuccessful. In 1876, the National Liberal League protested the law was unconstitutional and was proven this because the law imposed specific moral and medical mandates. In 1971, Congress eliminated birth control from law, and in 1994, the fine increased for abortion provision from $5,000 to $250,000 for a first-time offense. And this is our works cited page, the end.